doing some live streaming for the next half hour.
Oh, you need quiet?
It would be a bonus.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't have to be super
quiet. You're doing that right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Doesn't have to be super quiet. Right. Hey, so yeah, good people can hear what's going on. There's just a little bit of hold music at the moment. Alright, now that people have appeared, I'm going to start running through how to use the new looper. So I'm going to attempt to get the mic in a suitable place, so give me a yell if there's any issues there. So, yep, I'm going to run through basically how to use the looper. Hopefully you can hear this okay. And oh yes. Let's just check if I was getting myself in the shot too much. All right. Good to go. Still like the twist delay. So yeah, there's a new firmware up, which fixes a bunch of bugs that we just found with the Loopler, and also it means you can use more than one twist delay, because there was a bug where you could only use one twist delay. So yeah, I'm going to start showing some of the basic stuff from the new firmware. Obviously, one of the recent things is the new add module screen, so you can scroll through them forever like you did before. But you can also jump to see particular things. So if we're going to show off the looper, I'll just start from an empty preset. We'll show the first thing we need to do. So we're going to look in this collection for loops, and we've got loop common in and loop common out. This is a bit different than some of the ways some of the other modules are done, because the idea is that later on you'll be able to add in and outs for every single loop you have if you want as well. That's not supported in the current version, but that's the plan. So that's why I've done it as separate ones, just in case you wanted to position them differently around the patch. So we'll add one of those in, and we'll add one of the other ones in. Cool, we've got an in and an out. If we want to loop in stereo, then we'll just duplicate these, so we'll have an in and an out. which, yeah, we'll do now. I've only got mono in from the subharmonicon, but we'll do it anyway. So now I've got stereo in and out, and we'll duplicate this guy too. I'm attempting to keep my fingers out of the way of the camera, but hopefully you can get the idea. So we'll run that one to out 1, connect that one to out. There we go. And I'm only running mono in, so I'll just connect that to these. I forgot you could keep holding to get both of them. Anyway, there. So we've now connected up the looper. I haven't run any dry. You can choose whether to run the dry through, just through there, or whether connect the dry normally, or you can choose dry in the looper. So we'll go into the loopler now. They're basic things. So we'll just check if we can hear stuff. And I've turned up the volume, and no, why not? Because our dry is set to 0. So yeah, you can route the dry normally, which is what you do if you're having a more complicated patch, or you can just write it like this. Either one's fine. So you control the level of the dry here. I'll just put my dry level all the way up and turn my actual thing down, and we'll pause playing for the moment. So here in global settings, you can set the basic stuff, how things are quantized. So we can quantize the first loop or cycles. So cycles versus loops. There's a lot of different vocab here and a lot of complexity if you want to get into it. The Loopler is based on the EDP, the Echoplex Digital Pro from Oberheim or Gibson. And so any of the manuals for that are really handy. They go into a lot of detail. There's also a few other implementations of the EDP that are really handy. This one's based on Superlooper, so if you check out their documentation, that's really useful as well. They'll kind of talk a lot about how the different commands can be tied together. So anyway, the main things in the global settings, you've obviously got how things are synced, whether you're syncing to MIDI in. I've got USB MIDI plugged in at the moment from a keyboard over here. I should have been syncing to MIDI from the harmonicon. I didn't even think of that. Well, that would have been a great idea. Maybe I can plug that in. Input, obvious stuff, wet, dry. A crossfade is a little bit more confusing. That's basically how many samples you fade the loops between two to stop it from having any discontinuities, clicks at the start or end of a loop. That's, so crossfade, we can increase that. So 8 per cycle, that's basically allows you to, if you want to quantize to a smaller size time constant, like smaller blocks of time to quantize to, segments of your loop, you can say that they're divided up into beats of some time, 8ths. And this says how many 8ths there are in a cycle. So that's usually in relation to BPM. Obviously, they're currently insanely low. But that'll give you sensible things if you set them up and want to quantize to beats instead of actual loops or cycles. So that's handy for that. All right. We'll show you how to record something. So we've got just the default starting loop. You'll see that it has a little symbol in the corner, which is probably impossible to read from here, but it's either an S or an M for a stereo or a mono loop. You'll see it's got the little things up the top. So, if you've got a stereo or a mono loop, you can pan them. So you end up with two different pans in your pan left and pan right. If you've got a stereo loop, and just one of them if it's a mono loop. So we can just start our thingy playing. Record for a little bit. Now I've muted my input, so I'm just looping that. That worked better than I expected as far as how good that loop is. And you see how it waited to the end of that section because I've set it to it now does actions at a boundary of a loop because I've asked in my settings for it to quantize. You can also overdub quantize and mute quantize. Quantize is some, more actions. So yeah, you got that going now. Play that guy reversed. So you have to wait for that to, and now it'll come. So I swear this one already sounds reversed. So that's how we do record. So one of the regular things that is going to be asked is how do we map these to MIDI and how do we map these to the foot switches. So I'll just show that now. One sec, I've got some questions from the thingy. I'll glance at those. Oh yes. Yeah, good comment from Scott about the EDP manuals. They are pretty scary. There's a lot of content there. So yeah, it does try and parallel all of the commands basically. So yeah, if you want to know what all of them do in far too much detail, there is a lot of info there. Especially about how to use some of the more complicated commands, like if you're doing multiplies and substitutes and things like that, then some of the other ones are obvious, like what one shot or trigger and stuff do. But some of the other ones are much more complicated. So there are some additional features that aren't in the EDP that are in here, but they're all pretty minor. They're kind of nice little extra quality of life things. So let's map a thing. So to map a thing to a foot switch, like this trigger button, we'll hold it and we press the foot switch. So you saw that. Press that and then trigger it. So, yep, you can trigger things like that. So now I've just mapped that. So you just hold a thing and press a thing to map it to a foot switch. That's the same for all of these commands. You can also map things like these half speeds to the foot switches. Or you can control these with the knobs. If you touch this one. All right. There is one thing that's a little wacky in these ones, which is scratch. So if we go into scratch mode, we'll see that we're not playing anything anymore, and instead our play position is controlled by the knobs. If you map. And then you can move through the playhead, which is usually a bit more playable from MIDI, but which leads us on to MIDI. Now we go back to playing normally. All of these can now be bound to MIDI, whether it's rate or any of the commands. They all bind the same way. So I'll show you how to do that now. We'll try. What do we want to bind? we'll bind one of the things here. We might bind rate. It's a fun one. What's going on in the chat? So I'm just going to glance at that for one sec too. Okay, I'm just going to answer some of the questions from the chat. Maybe I'll pause this guy while I do that. Pause. Okay, just answering some of the questions from the chat. Why is the pan set to 0 and 1 for the other two sides? Because you can map each of the channels to the to either side. So basically, it's saying that the left channel is fully panned. Well, input, the two inputs. The first one is mapped fully to the left, or the first output, and the second one is mapped fully to the right output. But they could be panned either way. So yeah, if they were both panned in the middle, then they'd both be coming out both outputs. Yeah, so that's why they're at 0 and 1. So if you put in a mono loop, you'll see it's just at 0.5. It's going to be straight in the middle. And yes, will we eventually be able to add modules to individual loops? So yes, each individual loop will at some point in the future, the plan is to have them all have separate outputs. The code actually already supports that. I just have to work out how to make it nice in the interface. But the way that you add individual modules like you do at the moment, that's the plan. My level might be too hot. Okay. And yep, I'll show you how to bind stuff now. That's the next thing. Yep. So I've just got a USB MIDI controller here, just a keyboard with knobs next to me, and I'll show you how to bind for stuff. So we'll start our little thing playing again. I could have done that with a foot switch that we bound. And now we'll go into here, and actually, rate, we decided rate was more fun. So you hit this one, it goes colored, and then you hit the thing you want, and then this one starts flashing. It's now waiting to bind rate to something. So now I turn a knob. And you'll see it's now bound rate to this knob. That's it. That's how you bind things to MIDI. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward. You can do that for everything. You can do it for... Oh yeah, so if you can bind notes as well. So if you want to bind a note to a command, you can do that. I will show you how to do that as well. Obviously, I'm just pressing a key on the keyboard to do that. It's kind of fun, actually, this now. Let's go back to normal. So yeah, we can bind things here to notes. Well, we can bind this one. So let's bind trigger, waiting for it. Yeah, so that's me mashing that trigger and it's bound to that now. You can hear it go tick, 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 repeatedly triggering. And this one still. Yep. So yeah, we've obviously combined things to stuff. So you can bind them to CCs, notes, you know, all the MIDI things. There was a question about NRPMs, so higher detail MIDI controls. I haven't tested that. I haven't implemented that. So if it's vitally important, it's probably a possibility. For most of these things, you know, they're just triggers anyway. So. But yeah, that's how you do those, the basic things. Oh yes, there is an important thing to explain, which is if I add another loop and we record something into this one, we'll just start this guy playing again, and we might turn the... some different sounds out of this one. Yeah. So we've just did this other random loop that we've dropped in on top. So you'll see that it's highlighted now. If we press it again, it's not highlighted. So this controls whether the things you bind will act on everything or just the current thing, just the current selected loop. So a few people have noticed that, yeah, if you bind them when nothing is selected, your actions will actually influence both loops. But now I can bind something here, and then with nothing selected, I'll be binding it to a global. What you do will be affecting the loops. Some commands will just influence the current selected loop or the most recently selected loop. And then there are commands that will affect all loops. So yeah, you can do that with the foot switches or the MIDI binds. So the early one we bound, no, this one. See, it's just triggering what's called the first loop. If we bound it in this state, we could make it trigger both loops. Says with confidence. I've done this around the wrong way. I think I've broken that in the last update, actually. Or at least, it looks like it. Oh, okay, no. Okay, yeah. Trigger does that one, yep. So in global, trigger will trigger the most recently added loop. Yeah, it's that way around. That's getting a bit weird. So yeah, here that's how to add things, how to bind them to MIDI and foot switches. We'll just pause one of these guys. I'll just check if there are any other questions. Oh, okay. Question: is there any way to edit the assignments directly? No. It'd be nice, and it's a thing I've been thinking about. But at the moment, yeah, you just have to bind them. Which is the annoying thing, is you just have to remember them as well, which is a bit of an annoyance. So they are now saved they're now saved when you save a preset. So yeah, all the looper information is saved per preset. So if we save this now, it'll all be saved. The content of the loops won't be, but everything else will be. The plan in the future is, and that's why it's got the name Loopler, the sampling features, the plan is to be able to save all the loops as well. And then load WAV files into a loop. The main challenge with that at the moment is having a nice way to load them in. And I think I'll just have to specify the really short USB drives for that, because having a full-length USB drive, like a big long one sticking out, is just a big danger as far as fragility. Yeah, you can bind actions to each of the loops. So yeah, you could bind record to loop 1, bind record to loop 2, or the other one is bind to the other to the active loop. Yeah. Okay, for set to next loop, like select loop as a MIDI command. No, but I am going to add it. Yeah, there should be a way to select that loop. I've worked out how to do that in the UI. I just couldn't work out a nice way to do it, but now I've worked out. I'm just going to make it so that you can, if you just tap the MIDI bind thing and then click the loop, that'll be waiting for you to bind select loop. But yeah, it doesn't do it at the moment. Instead, you'll just have to bind record in loop 1 and record in loop 2, or whatever you want to do. That's still pretty fun. So yeah, they're the regular questions about the looper, just how to do the basics. Obviously there's things like undo and redo. They're infinite levels of undo and redo. You should be able to get, when I say infinite, you should be able to get thousands of them realistically before you run out. There's lots of RAM. There's 2 gig of RAM, so we're not going to run out in a hurry. What else is important? Obviously, the others do kind of what you expect. The only bit one that's pretty weird is delay, which, if you press a couple of times, you'll see it sets to the time you've been pressing it, and records a loop of that long, or plays a loop of that long. The start of my loop is silent, so this is going to be a bit weird, I think.
Well, if you ever need to borrow that, go pop that.
So, but we'll pull something in there. There we go. So you can pull in stuff like that. You saw how I was just grabbing sections of sound into it. So it's just looping that. Now if I put in another section of sound, let's lay it on top. I've turned down my feedback so that gets a little bit less intense. Now I've just got it working as a delay basically. So you see I played a note and then so it works as a delay like that. And you can do sound on soundy kind of stuff like that. Obviously you can still do all the other stuff. And if you want to do the feedback, if you've got the feedback up high, you can, you know, obviously change between all of that. Let's try that again. We'll crank the feedback up a little bit. And now we can, you know, crank down our so obviously, you know, the delay function works pretty differently than everything else does, but you know, you still have a lot of the power. Oh, I haven't shown threshold start yet. Threshold start I really love. All right. Yeah. Sorry if it seems a little chaotic. I'm getting back into the general vibe of the live streaming concept. So yeah, delay's quite a powerful tool, and you can do fun things with it. So yeah, you'll see that the other commands, because it's in delay mode, this command won't necessarily. It'll be sitting there waiting to sync. So we'll have to go back to normal. Which is actually a very nice loop now. I recorded that one in backwards, which you can do. So let's pause that. Not very nice loop. But yeah, we can have one of the loops be. We'll pop this one in as. So we popped a delay in here. But we can do something else with this loop still. You know, this can be a totally normal loop, while this one's being a delay. That's all, you know, all the possibility. Oh yeah, and this one's a mono loop, so we can pan that one as we want as well. Let's pan that over here. Yeah, so there's some ideas about, you know, generally using the loop. Obviously, there's a ton of depth with all of the commands, all of the layering, you know, the delay being quite so powerful. You saw scratching, which makes more sense from a MIDI controller, and being able to control just all of this stuff from MIDI, all the foot switches. I'll just glance at the questions. Yeah, so 100% feedback will keep, with the delay, we'll keep it looping, yeah. You can do some other weird stuff as well with turning on play feedback as well. That changes the behavior quite a lot because you can control whether feedback only occurs during
well, for the other commands like overdub and stuff, you can control whether feedback occurs only during the command or when it's playing as well. Yes, you can bind the rate boxes. I'll show that now. Yes. As far as being able to control whether things happen on, you can bind any of the commands to node on. So you can make them work in a I just bumped the camera. In a in a sus kind of manner. However, at the moment, the system for assigning stuff isn't very flexible about whether it's on the foot switch up, foot switch down, hold, node on, node on, node off kind of stuff. So there is going to be a system. I'm going to improve that system so you can specify more details about what you want the actual action to be for things like sus and toggles versus sus. At the moment, the actions happen on the foot switch up. So if you're trying to make your timing perfect, just remember that bit. Phrase and sound and sound looping together it's pretty interesting stuff. Of course, you can already kind of do that because you can run a delay like a normal, like the twist or the normal delay or any of those at the same time as the loopler. Those can all be running simultaneously. Actually, I should have dropped in a reverb just so I had to have pretty reverby sounds on my subharmonicon. Having a variety of feedback options is handy. No, at the moment you can't bind. Which way around is that? I think I've got it set at the moment so you can't bind multiple actions to a single foot switch. I think they're exclusive. Trying to remember that code. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're exclusive. I can glance at the code for that, but I'm pretty sure they're exclusive. The plan is once I've got the more screen, the thing that lets you choose everything, that's gonna let you do that. The other plan is for the more screen is that you'll be able to any button, any slider in the user interface for every module will have the same kind of MIDI binding in it. And in that more screen, there's also going to be a numpad for entering numbers directly, just in case you want to have a specific number. At the moment, every slider, setting numbers is a bit annoying, and only the delay time has that numpaddy thing. But that's going to be everywhere soon. Okay, so that's the basic stuff I think for the looper. If there's any other specific questions about the looper or the loopler, so the loops delete in order. So if you just hit delete, it'll delete loop 1. How do you delete the first loop? You don't. If you just hit record, it'll just start from clean again. Questions? Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. So, yeah, multiply, replace, insert, and substitute. Those commands basically control how the new audio is put in. Multiply is different than all the other ones. They also can do slightly different things depending on how you chain the commands, like which command you do before and after. The EDP manuals have huge amounts of information on all of these combos. Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh yeah, Brock, you might actually be correct. I think I just changed that code, but I'm not 100% sure. Can you hear the differences between in and out modules once more? Yeah, so I'll jump back to the main screen to show that. So looper coming in, looper coming. So I've got two because I'm running in stereo. If you just want to run in mono, just add one. And yeah, they just the reason they're done like that is just to make it easier to control where they're being routed. Because often you'll want them to be in different parts of your signal chain if you have a more complicated patch. So here I've just got the loopler in the patch, but if you want to run, if you're running a ton of other modules around them, you might want to route you might want to route your delay, your loop through a delay or a granular or something like that after the loop, whereas you might want to route your dry not through that. So that's easy to do here. You can just route one of those things to another module. I might actually show that so I can show some of the new stuff with the granular interface as well. That's the only other thing I think I need to show for this this update, because the granular interface changed. Yeah, so multiply is the way of getting more cycles. So your loop ends up being the length of your loop is multiplied, so it ends up being longer and ends up being a number of cycles long. But it's basically, it's overdub, but also making the loop longer. Yeah, and if you use it on a loop that has already been multiplied, you can actually make the loop shorter again. But yeah, that multiply has different actions depending on which thing you hit after it as well. There's a few ones that do that. So remember that the commands have different series of commands. The EDP manual should explain all of that. Just glancing at the other questions. When the word is matter in or out. Oh yeah. Sorry, Cosmic Fan. No, it doesn't. They're all just they all go to the same place. If you press any of them, then they just end up in the same place. They're all the same. They're just ins and outs for the same module, basically. I know it's confusing compared to all the other modules. It's a bit weird, but I did it this way just so it'd be a little easier to organize them on the screen, and mostly because of that plan of being able to add different numbers of ins and outs for in the future when you have outs per loop. That was my plan. If you reassign, I can't remember if I already answered that. Yeah, if you reassign a MIDI learn control, it just overwrites the previous one. Yeah, it does. So the main difference between insert and substitute. replace and substitute are very similar. Yeah, so it's replace, basically don't hear the original loop playing while you're recording over it. And substitute you do. Yeah, whereas insert's kind of different. It's about sticking new audio in that is a cycle length. You'll see that in the little interface. Or when I pop back, jump back to it. You'll see that their icons kind of look. See how that's like new cycle, little circles of cycles. So new cycle being stuck in. Whereas see, replace is switching out one of the cycles. The multiply is getting the cycles longer. Delay is being confusingly different. Yep, so if there's no other urgent questions about the looper, I might just show how the new yeah, yep. Yep, good explanations there from Scott about all the thingies. MIDI out from MIDI note out from Bebo. Next firmware I should get that done. I just wanted to get all this Loopler stuff finished, so it's been a bit of a fiddle just because there's lots going on. And I really wanted to get that. The new add module interface actually took longer than it should have, but I really wanted to make that neater because I thought it was annoying me that it was messy and was taking up my time. Okay, yeah, briefly, a few people asked about the Granular, so I'll just give you a few seconds on the new interface for that. And then that's probably going to be the end of the collection. Okay. So yeah, I'm just going to show how that. I'll just record something normal into this. No, maybe I won't. I'll do this. So we'll route one of these outputs into a Granular. So you'll see there's a few ways we can find things now. We can either jump to synths or weird, I think, or we can just hit G and Granular. We'll put this here. And so, yeah, you can see that we can run the outputs of this of the looper through another module. Let's go here, disconnect those outs. I'm sorry if my fingers are in the road. It's kind of hard to work out how to press things with also not putting your fingers in the road of things. So now we have the Granular in the path. And so I just fed the loop is still in delay mode. So I just fed some new sound into it. And you hear it's going through the Granular as well. So yes, the new interface for Granular just makes it more obvious how the grain curves occur. You can get to the really crunchy square ones or the more diffuse triangle. Crank spread up because it's fun. Now the annoying thing about the new Granular interface at the moment is that it doesn't support MIDI binding. That's because it's going to use the new system.
So if you do want to get MIDI commands into the new Granular, you can still you'll have to feed them in via CV as CV. So you need to use a CV MIDI to CC to CV converter first, which is annoying, and that's gonna be fixed in the next update. I just wanted to get this interface out, and then I forgot that it needed the more stuff. So we've now frozen some objects into the Granular. It's now more obvious that this controls the way the grains are spread out. So you can see tons of regular grains, tons of irregular grains, some grains, some irregular grains. And it makes more obvious what that... because that rate was previously a bit confusing in the visuals. So now it's just clearer what that does. It also makes it more obvious that the middle section is interesting. Because if we chuck it into the middle, we don't get any grains. And you're like, what is going? But we can trigger individual grains. So if I add... what shall I add? So we could trigger them from a foot switch. If we wanted to, we could just say, press a foot switch and make a grain, or we could add them from the Chaos controller is probably the most fun. This will start to eat some of my CPU, but there we go. Chaos controller into this guy. We'll be sending a trigger, so we'll send maybe 2, 3. And we'll send that into the trigger of the Granular. And now you'll see it starting to trigger again. Speed that up a little bit. So now it's triggering grains. So you can control that. So you can get some really fun patterns with the grains then, just because you got a more powerful grain controller triggering it. And obviously I got it set to freeze at the moment, but you can actually still do this with the incoming grains as well. If I turn off freeze, it'll now do it to the incoming audio. Now it's grabbing it based on those the Chaos controller's triggers. Yeah, so that's how to do some stuff with the new Granular interface as well. Yeah, controlled by the Chaos controller. Obviously, you can control it from, onset detection or things like that, which is kind of fun. So you can cause it to trigger grains once it gets, a particular volume node or something like that, or trigger on node ons, all those kind of things. So yeah, choosing the granular density like that gives you a bit more power. Obviously, being able to modulate all the other parameters are fun as well. I think I've shown before how you can quantize pitch from the Chaos controller if you want to start repitching that stuff. Okay, other questions. I think this will be probably the end of the stream. Yeah. So, how many grains can you do with granular lots? I'd have to glance at the code to actually remember. I think it's
Oh, bugger. Sorry, I just knocked things over. I'll have to glance at the code to actually tell you a sensible number. One sec. I can glance at that and tell you actually what the number is, but I'll look at the other questions. I am thinking about doing more regular live streams, but it just takes up a little bit of time. But yeah, it's quicker than making videos. So, and I get to actually know what people want to hear. So that's really handy. Yeah, it'll be the same as it's a Porter Cloud, so it'll be the same. It'll be 60. I don't think I changed anything to do with the total number of grains. I might have. I can glance at the code for that anyway. I think it might be something like that. Anyway, I don't. I'm not sure how many grains so I can do, but I don't think total number of grains is really. I mean, you can do some cool things if you have lots of little ones, but I am contemplating a different type of granular module in the future. But there's already a bunch of different ones. So like one of the more interesting granular modules is the time stretcher, actually. MIDI note when. Didn't you ask the exact same question slightly earlier? Maybe it's somebody different. It's going to be in the next firmware update, probably. So, which will probably be in a couple of weeks. I've run out of panels at the moment, so I've got a little bit more time for firmware, but I'm also just planning to move workshop very soon, so I'm moving to a slightly bigger space to a much bigger space so I can have some new toys. Specifically some more sheet metal working tools. There is lots of phaser options. Would you be able to do one? Well, you can control the LFO for each, so you could run the LFOs in a different phase for each channel, I guess. But I'm not sure if that's exactly kind of the thing you want. So there isn't a phaser that does exactly that out of the box. All right, I think that's pretty much everything. Hopefully the basics you worked out. You can see how you can bind stuff to MIDI, how you can turn things, control the basic things in the Loopler, how the new Granular works, how you can control things from foot switches. So that is a bit different than some of the other modules, but I was just trying a more snazzy system for the Loopler that I'm planning to introduce to some of the other modules. But I think that's probably everything for today. Hopefully that's useful. I'm looking forward to what you do with the Loopler. Especially I'm not the world's expert on doing fun things with the feature set. So I'm really excited to see what people who are really into that kind of looping can do with it. I'm much more experienced with sampling, actually. So there will be some more sampling focused features in the future. So you can get a lot of that sampling kind of stuff with just sending it triggers. All right, that's everything. Thanks everybody, and we will see you all at the next live stream.